Welcome once again to the Radical Imagination. I'm your host, Jim Vrettos. I've taught sociology at John Jay College of Criminal Justice and Yeshiva University here in New York City. Noam Chomsky, when asked what ordinary people can do in the face of the seemingly insurmountable injustice they faced, responded by saying that things change because lots of people are working all the time. They're working in their communities or their workplace or wherever they happen to be. And they're building up the basis for popular movements. The world is topsy-turvy. Things are all wrong. The wrong people are in jail for petty technical offenses. And the wrong people are out of jail for their enormous crimes. The wrong people are in power. The wrong people are out of power. Wealth is distributed unjustly so that a very few are rich and others are very poor. And others scramble like mad for what little is left. The problems are so horrendous that we need to go outside the legal structure and framework, resist, disobey, and build to create the kinds of institutions and relationships which a decent society should have. The principles of our own Declaration of Independence, the spirit that gave us the right to alter or abolish forms of government that deprived us of our life, liberty, and right to pursue happiness, can guide us. From the American Revolution to the abolitionists, suffragette, and labor movements, from the welfare rights, Vietnam anti-war, and civil rights movements, to today's Me Too, Code Pink, Black Lives Matter, Greenpeace, and Extinction Rebellion movements, we have numerous examples of progressive, popular movements in our history that tried to do just that. Today in the Radical Imagination, we have three of the most dedicated and committed political activists of our time. Debra Sweet is a career activist beginning as a teenager in Madison, Wisconsin, and is founder and executive director of World Can't Wait, a coalition group dedicated to mobilizing mass resistance to what it describes as crimes committed by the U.S. government. Zool Zulkowitz is a conceptual artist, lifelong anti-war, social justice activist, and founding member of the collective, The Politics of Justice and Joy, which builds coalitions connecting issues of supremacy, inequity, militarism, and environmental sustainability. Carl Dix is a founding member of the Revolutionary Communist Party, was involved in the 1970 Fort Lewis Six, serving 2 years in prison as part of the largest mass refusal of direct orders during the Vietnam War. Carl, along with Cornel West, was a central figure in the 2011-2012 campaign to stop and frisk, and was arrested and stood trial to oppose New York City's stop and frisk program. Carl, it's so great to have you here.
It's good to be on your show.
It really is. It's wonderful to see you again. And what we're going to do right now is show a brief clip of Bob Avakian, and then we will have a little chat about that. Okay? Sounds good?
You know, there's a whole thing out there, and I'm speaking particularly, to people who do catch the worst hell under the system and, find all kinds of wrong ways to lash out at the way that they feel that they're being told every day that they're worthless and useless and, scum and so on, who lash out violently to each other. But there's this whole notion that, if you aren't over somebody else, you're weak. I mean, some people, will even talk about how if you're in this life, out on the streets and whatever, in these communities, in neighborhoods where all this is, so intense, you can't even laugh, at least not in public. You might laugh in private, but you can't even laugh because it makes you look weak. And so the only way that you cannot be weak is by over other people. And one of the main ways, if you're a man, that you can over other people is to women. Now, we are bringing forward and have to fight ferociously for a whole different morality, a whole different way of going through the world, which is based on a scientific understanding of how we're going to get rid of what this oppression of all kinds is rooted in, and how we're going to get rid of it through a revolution to overthrow the system. But we have to go to people and say, there is nothing weak about fighting for the emancipation of humanity. You want to talk about something that takes courage and heart, going up against this whole system. As an emancipator of humanity, to get rid of this whole system, take it on and bring it down and put something much better in its place, that takes a tremendous amount of heart. It's not we're in a contest to show, who's badder, who's tougher, who's not weak. That's not what it's about. But if you want to talk about an outlook on the world, fighting for the emancipation of everybody in the world from every form of oppression, exploitation, is the most powerful and meaningful thing you can do. And you don't, the question isn't being over or over someone else. It's being an emancipator. It's being a revolutionary. It's going up against this whole system in order to put an end to all the that's put you in the situation you're in and has put billions of people like you, male, female, and so on, all genders, in the same kind of situation. That's what we're about. That's the heart that's involved in doing this, as well as, it's founded on a science, but it takes heart. That's the heart. The heart to say, we're going to do away with any way in which anybody's over anybody in the entire world. You want to talk about something that's not weak, well, that's it right there, even though the point is not, we're more hard than everybody else. It's not a contest to be hard. This is about emancipating humanity. But we have to break out of this whole trap where the terms are either you are over somebody or you're getting We have to break out of that, not by, moralizing at people to go to church, and all the rest of it. Get with the revolution. Put all that anger and that frustration at the way that you're being done daily into this revolution. This is what anybody who really wants to stand up. This is what anybody who wants to have their life mean something. Yes, something bigger than themselves, but something that gives expression in the highest way to what someone's life can be about. This is where you need to go, and this is what you need to be part of. And we need to go fight with people about this. Get out of this whole framework of, if you're not over women in particular, or you're not over the people on the next block, then you're soft and weak, and your life is not about anything. Get out of that, because the choices are not being the or being over. The choices are being enslaved or emancipated. And that's what we represent, and that's what we got to take to people and fight fiercely with them about. And yes, one of the most concentrated expressions of that is fighting for the emancipation of women. You got all these people that pretend that they're progressive and whatever, and they're all going right along with U.S. imperialism and this, and under the banner that Biden and all these people are putting out about this is a world, this is a contest in the United States and throughout the world between democracy and autocracy. Trump is an autocrat. Putin is an autocrat. Xi Jinping is an autocrat. Of course, they don't talk about their own autocrats, like the heads of the government, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, you can go down the list, that are all part of their alliance. Hungary, Poland, what have you. Those are all autocratic governments. But there are autocratic governments. Like they said about the Shah of Iran back in 1978 when the uprising was occurring, which eventually led to his overthrow. There was an article that said the Shah, in one of the major newspapers in this country that said, the Shah of Iran may be a despot, but he's our despot. So, our autocrats are okay, but the ones that are challenging our dominance in the world and our ability to plunder and slaughter people all over the world, which is what they've been doing forever, those autocrats are no good. you can see that this is a battle between imperialist powers, all of which, on both sides, have whole histories of horrendous atrocities, and base themselves on vicious exploitation of people and oppression of people all over the world.
Well, Carl, a lot to unpack there. So tell our audience a little bit who this individual is. Bob Avakian, the Revolutionary Communist Party that you're co-founder of. Give us a little background and let's get into some of the material that he's talked about here.
Well, look, Bob Avakian is the foremost political thinker and leader in the world today. He was the founder of the Revolutionary Communist Party, and he's a leader of a movement for an actual revolution here in this country. And even more importantly, he is the architect of the new communism, a new framework for human emancipation. Because like he's saying, we got to emancipate the whole world. That's what we have to be aiming to do, and that's what we have to carry out. And these clips are from interviews that he recently did on the Revolution Nothing Less show, a YouTube show that actually
at the bookstore, right?
Well, it comes on every Thursday on YouTube.
I see.
At 8 p.m. here on the East Coast. And people really need to check it out, because through that show you not find out what's happening, because people know what's happening, and many people know they hate it. The problem is they don't know why it's happening and what they can do about it. And that's what they need to get. And Avakian is the leader that can bring that to you. He brought it in these interviews on the Revolution Nothing Less show. It gets followed and developed on that show every week. And people need to really check that out, because, look.
How is this different from, you mentioned the new communism. Just tell us, how is that different than the old communism?
The difference is that Avakian, after the overthrow of revolutionary rule in China, and China became a social imperialist power, spreading its tentacles over the world and contending with the U.S. That's what's going on now. When China and the U.S. talk about, are they going to go to war? It's over which empire is going to dominate that part of the world and the whole world. And the point is, we need no empires. We need to get rid of all of them. And what Avakian did is he looked at the experience of the Chinese Revolution, the experience of the Soviet Union and its revolution, for what they accomplished, what they got right, but also what were the shortcomings and errors in it? Where did they miss the mark? Where did they fall off?
Whether they became too totalitarian or authoritarian?
No, that wasn't it. It was a question of understanding what it was that was driving imperialist domination and how you go about going at it. And that led to, you're referring to errors that were made. That led to the errors that were made because...
And what drives it again?
What drives it is these imperialists are fighting over control of the world,
power,
and maximizing a profit. That's what they're fighting over. And they're going to be driven to do that. And you can't make a deal with them, work together with them, coax them off that path. You actually have to defeat them. And going at that requires unleashing the masses of people to take it up, including after you make the revolution. It's not like you make the revolution, put the revolutionary communists in charge, and they'll take care of it.
So it's not a vanguard. Do they see themselves as a vanguard party?
Well, a vanguard is necessary to lead. Revolution's a very complex process.
True.
Believe me, you're going up against the system, you're going to take it on. You got to have an understanding of how it works, how it's going to come at you, how you can absorb the repression that's going to come down and overcome it, defeat and dismantle these institutions of violence, oppression. That's not going to happen spontaneously. You're going to need scientific leadership. And that's what this movement for an actual revolution and its leader, Avakian, provides. And you saw an instance of that. And look, people need to check out these interviews. People need to check out these interviews because...
Again, they're on, tell us when they're on again.
Well, they can go to the website, revcom.us.
Okay.
The interviews are all posted up there. And they could also find out about the Revolution Nothing Less show there and go to it on YouTube for its weekly show.
And they can get their T-shirts, right?
Yeah, the T-shirt does speak to it. But they can go to that for, look, get into this interview because people need to dig into why we need a revolution, why we can't just elect the Democrats and hope that they'll take care of the fascist Republicans.
And even
they're
so-called
all
progressives,
imperialists.
right?
They're all imperialists, whether they're progressive,
Well, it's
reactionary,
part of the
or
same...
not. They all represent a capitalist imperialist system, and
One-
that's not going to protect us. We have to actually get out from under that. We need a movement that is aiming to do that. And this interview will break down why that's necessary, why you can't solve these problems short of it, why you can't abolish the police without abolishing the system that needs the police and needs the prisons and needs the military. It will also get into how that could actually be done, because if it needs to be done but you can't do it, it's not going to motivate people. Well, it can be done. It's possible. He breaks that down, and he brings a vision of the new world that could be brought into being through revolution. And then the other thing is you get to meet this revolutionary leader, find out how he developed, where he came from, the people who influenced him, the developments that influenced him back in the 1960s, and how he managed to stay on the road to revolution. And even in the face of setbacks, like the overthrow of revolutionary rule in China, he was like, well, let's be scientific about this. Let's not be beaten down by it. How do we figure out how to go forward?
So, for example, we were involved in the Stop, Stop, and Frisk movement. We protested, we demonstrated, we got arrested, we had a trial. Okay, we made, wouldn't you say, some significant progress in the narrative, raising consciousness. So now what? What needed to be done in the years since that? It was 2011, 12. We have a mayor now who's bringing back
Stop and Frisk.
So tell me
Street
what
Crimes
Avakian,
Unit with another name.
Absolutely. What you and Avakian are trying to do. What
what
we have done during that time to not, you know what I'm trying to say.
I get what you're trying to say.
Okay.
Look, when I initiated that, it was actually part of an overall strategy of fight the power and transform the people for revolution. In other words, if we don't fight these attacks, they will beat us down so far we'll never be able to do anything.
Right.
But through the course of fighting these attacks, people can raise their heads, and we have to bring to them the understanding that these attacks aren't because of a bad politician, a bad mayor, a bad police chief, a bad president, a bad Congress, a bad Supreme Court. There's a system that's responsible for this. And to end these attacks once and for all, we need to get rid of that system. Where I think we fell short is we didn't take on the programs that take people back into the confines of the system. We can get a lawsuit that will take down Stop and Frisk. We can elect a new mayor who will be against Stop and Frisk, and that'll take care of it for you. No, that wasn't enough. And this is something else.
Would defunding the police be an incremental change toward that systematic structural revolution you're talking about? And then we have a couple more clips.
No, it doesn't do that. It takes you in the wrong direction. Because first off, you're asking the people who have the police out there doing exactly what they're doing to people, have the prisons there doing what they're doing to people. It takes your energy into trying to convince them to do something. They're not going to defund their police. They need their police to hold down the people that they hate and fear.
But
the
if
people
they
that
could,
their system
if they
won't
could
work
have done that, and that's still, I understand that's a stepping stone, or is it?
It's not a stepping stone.
So you got to go from
it's
one.
It's a step in the wrong direction.
All right, okay.
You actually have to see that we have to get rid of this system and build a fight for that.
Okay.
And these interviews are a way for people to grapple with that understanding.
All right.
And like he said, an opening for us to fight with them over where this stuff really comes from and what it's really going to take to get rid of it.
I think we have a couple other
Two short clips,
Short clips too. And we'll talk to you more about this.
The climate, what's happening with it is way bigger than the individual. The threat of nuclear war is way bigger than any individual. The mass shooting of black people, Latinos, and Native Americans by police is way bigger than any individual. You know, the constant brutality, you know, even by intimate loved ones, against women, the massive rapes. You know, like you talk about college students, and all the women that talk, one of the first things they talk about is, especially in relation to the taking away of the right to abortion, but more generally, is they're all afraid of being raped. That's way bigger than any individual. How in the world are you going to solve that? Any of those things I just mentioned, by everybody going for themselves and staying in your lane. As I point out to people, we need to make people aware that staying in your lane will not protect you from being run over by the system. So, you know, these things have to be solved by people recognizing what's going on, getting to the root of it, and then acting collectively to transform all this. And it doesn't mean individuals don't count. Of course they count. But that's in the context of the larger things that are going on. We can no longer afford to allow these imperialists to dominate the world and to determine the destiny of humanity.
The Russians are going, hey, the U.S. is fighting a proxy war against us. I think the answer is yes, we are.
The president warning the risk of nuclear Armageddon has not been this high since the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Time is running out for the United States to prepare itself and allies for a possible war with China.
You have a conflict in East Asia, a conflict in Ukraine, and that's really the beginnings of the world's next global war.
They need to be overthrown as quickly as possible.
Yeah, that's the take-home message.
Take-home message.
As long as these imperialists continue to dominate the world, we're going to have wars and the threats of wars, including between nuclear-armed powers. And you can't deal with a nuclear war by staying in your lane. That's not going to deal with it. We're going to have climate catastrophe because it's their system and its drive for profit and the competition between them over that's driving the climate catastrophe as well as everything else. And this is not something that can go on forever because right now things are coming to a head. You do have people right up in the realm of power. I mean, Trump was the president for a while. He's out now, but his movement is not off the scene, and they are aiming for a fascist form of rule in this country and fighting for that. And then the Democrats, they're talking about, well, we're ready to work across the aisle. You're going to work with the fascists? How's that going to work for you? That's not going to go anywhere. We actually need a movement for an actual revolution.
So electoral politics really doesn't figure in to this at this point, correct?
No, it doesn't. It's not a way to resolve these problems.
Okay.
You got to get rid of this system. And we in the Movement for an Actual Revolution are aiming to make 2023 a year when revolution is put onto the map. And a key part of that is spreading these interviews.
Okay.
People watching them, engaging them, digging into them, spreading it to others.
Like Chomsky was saying in that opening I had.
Yes, that's very important.
Yeah.
But then there's a question of what is it building towards? And it has to build towards getting rid of this system. Because if it gets drawn off into this movement building that's being done is to make sure the Democrats hang on to power, then we're going to keep getting what's been happening. And that's if the Democrats succeed, and there's no bet that they're going to succeed.
Right, exactly.
Because these fascists are very serious. And they're actually not, they're saying like, well, the Republicans are in such chaos, they can't even get their agenda passed through Congress. Their agenda is fascist rule, which doesn't get passed through Congress.
So it's, that's good for them.
So you could end up with that form of rule, or even if you keep the Democrats in power, well, look, we got the war in Ukraine. We got more people killed by the police this past year than any previous year. The right to abortion got taken away. Look, we have to get rid of this system, and we're going to make this a year of putting revolution on the map, bringing forward a movement for an actual revolution, enlisting hundreds and then thousands, tens of thousands and beyond in that. And these interviews are very crucial to it. People need to watch it.
And the alternatives are also spelled out or discussed and debated here.
Yes.
Because that's what you need to show people, too, that this is the alternative. This is what we're building toward.
Yes, the vision
not
of a
just
future
the
society.
structure of the present.
Because Avakian's the author of a constitution for a future socialist republic in North America that breaks down what the society would look like, beginning with day one after the revolution and going forward. Because we're contributing to ending exploitation and oppression worldwide. And we've developed a plan for that. We've got a leadership for it.
Just like I'm a social scientist. You mentioned it's a scientific movement as well. Just tell us, what does that mean?
What that means is that you have to develop an understanding of the way reality actually is, how it got that way, and how it could be transformed. What are the ways and manners that you could go about it? You can't go just on, well, we'd like to see it different. Wouldn't it be good if it was different? We have to actually understand that there is a system that is driven.
Empirical, data-based, systemic.
Empirical data and also trends. Because we can't just sit back and collect the data and see. We have to discern trends from it.
Then what do you make of that?
Yeah, what do we make of that data? What are the trends?
Which most social scientists, don't.
And the point to doing that is then you can understand, okay, here's why so many people fall for this stuff that the imperialists lay out. A big part of it is repression. That's how they keep the people on the bottom of society down. They have,
or as Bob said, internalizing it too, or turning it onto others, and so on.
And then they have you fighting each other
for the crimes.
Whatever basis. From whatever basis, they have people thinking that, men in particular, thinking that maintaining domination over women is something that they have a reason to want to keep in place, and not understand that that domination that they exercise over women is part of humanity being held down and ensnared in this system.
Even that this tragic event on the football field the last couple of days, this young kid. There's mixed messages now. They wanted to stop the game, and then the officials or the league was saying, no, we need to go forward. Well, let's take 5 minutes and we'll warm up and so on. Because again, sort of a militaristic argument. Well, he's fallen, but we can't stop the game. Send in the next one.
Okay, well, look.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
They were not going to be able to keep that game going. Somebody almost died.
Exactly.
And then they were going to tell the other people, keep banging your heads against each other.
We're in agreement.
No. So
tell us one more time. We only have a few more seconds. How to reach you and
how
Bob
to reach you. Go to the website, revcom.us. Check out the Avakian interviews. Spread them. Donate money so we can get the word out about them all over the place. Go to the bookstore
and spread the
bookstore, our Revolution Books up in Harlem.
Thank you. Will do. Thank you, Carl. As always, I loved seeing you. And thank you very much for bringing the message.
Thank you for having me on again.
Thank you. Take care. Well, welcome again for our second segment. And Debra is here. Debra Sweet Zool is here. Thank you both so very, very much for coming on the Radical Imagination today and talking to me and talking to our audience about the many, many events and projects that you've been involved in your whole life and presently. And Debra, why don't you start it off telling us about what your work with Guantanamo and making us more aware of what is going on down there.
Well, it's January 2023. And I know for the last 21 years, at least at the beginning, the word Guantanamo, after the Bush regime opened this torture camp outside the law intentionally so that the men imprisoned there would have no rights, people began to think, oh, the word Guantanamo meant an unjust, illegitimate prison. And I think people really thought righteously this was going to bring down both the Bush regime and that Obama, when he got elected, promising to close it, it was going to be something really different. And so I'm finding these days that people are kind of like, oh, Guantanamo, is that what was it? You know, is it a lot of the young people I talked to were not born when it was opened. It was a prison camp that is on stolen land from Cuba. that the U.S. maintains and opened on January 11th, 2002, supposedly to imprison the worst of the worst, that Bush and Cheney said were responsible for 9/11. And ultimately 779 men have been held there. 9 of those men died there.
9.
And there are still 35 men held. Most of those men, 20 of them, have already been cleared for release, some as many as more than almost 10 years ago.
And
so
none
they're
of them,
sitting,
yeah,
sitting
and no
there with
due
no
process,
rights.
right? No legal.
That's the big thing,
process, right?
Jim, is that this was a prison set up intentionally to be outside of both U.S. law, because it's off the mainland, and outside of international law. So Bush created a fake category, a pretend category of someone called an enemy combatant that didn't have the rights of a prisoner of war. So men have been held there to this day with no charges.
And several, Deborah, isn't this right, who not only have not been cleared for release, but who don't have a trial set, who may never be released?
Yeah, there are 3 men that are still referred to as forever prisoners. And we assume the government has no plans to ever charge them, because to charge them and give them a trial would reveal the utter horror of what the U.S. did in Guantanamo in torturing people.
So that's why they won't release them. But what do you think will? What's the real reason behind?
I think the real reason, and you know, again, I hear people say, "Oh, Guantanamo, that's not who we are." Yes, that's who the U.S. is. First of all, look at history. You destroyed a population of indigenous people. You enslaved human beings to build up this empire. You do all of what you've done around the world, and it is who you are, U.S. government. And that's a big part of it, I think. And I think that Obama also, while he said, I was going to close it, and then Trump said, oh, I'm going to keep it open, I love it. And then Biden says, oh, he's going to close it. They all confront the same thing, that they have an empire dominating the world. You have to have a place like this. You're holding it over the heads of the rest of the globe.
You know what I love is what you call your world can't wait. We can't wait for the truth. We need to get this out, as you're trying to do, as you both are trying to do. So world can't wait, because we'll be waiting forever before the truth.
And Deborah's also expounding on the historical reality of rendition and black sites. There's nothing new about this.
No, and
well, but it was a particular
too.
Feature.
Yes.
It was a particular feature of the so-called war on terror.
Yes.
That Cheney said would last 4 generations, and
forever.
And his daughter Liz apparently has signed up for the same thing. Not to mention the fascist Republican Party. They are indebted to and based on U.S. global domination. You know, I liked what Avakian said. We can no longer allow these imperialists to dominate the world and determine humanity's destiny. They have to be overthrown. I agree with that. But we, living in this country, we have got to get out of this America thing. America first. America is the center of the universe, the most important. We would never do anything so bad. You built an empire on doing these bad things. And
of a very distorted vision that messes people up so much.
And following on what Carl Dix said, we have to eliminate empire. You know, and he also mentioned, as Deborah just did, it's January, it's 2023. Happy New Year, everyone. Hopefully by the time you've seen the show, you'll come to a number of the events that we're working on now. But what Carl ended with, I think what we would want to interpret as well, let 2023 be the year that we put revolution on the map, because that's all we can do. The group that I'm working with is called Rising Together, and I've got a little gift for you. Jim. This is a whistle. Oh, good.
Right.
And you can't have too many. And
that's right. And Carl gave me a whistle.
Oh, good.
Back in 2011.
Well, this one says, "I'm a whistleblower for justice, people, and planet." Rising Together is a coalition-building group co-chaired by Ralph Pointer, who most people know better as Lynn Stewart's widower, Kathy Kelly of Chicago, Nick Modern of Ban Killer Drones, and Veterans for Peace. And it's a coalition building group. And we have groups going from Assange Defense and Black Lives Matter and Code Pink, all the way through Jewish Voice for Peace, Mumia Coalition, Rights of Veterans for Peace, and World Beyond War and World Can't Wait. So we're very excited about the work that Debra's been doing. And by the time this airs, we hope that many of this audience would have been out with us on the steps of the main library in New York City, 41st and 5th Avenue, Wednesday, January 11th. And maybe you want to talk a little bit more about that, and then we'll also talk about the anti-war events we're working on. No to NATO on Saturday, January 14th, and then an event that Debra will be appearing at with quite an interesting group of people on January 16th, which this audience will have an opportunity to attend.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know, people want to, young people especially to me now say, Guantanamo, you know, what the heck is it? Why did people get put there? And taking us back to the war without end. That was the global war on terror, which I always called the global war of terror on the globe, begun by Bush and Cheney and Rumsfeld and so forth in 2001, when Al-Qaeda took down the World Trade Center. And they took revenge on the whole world, they being the Bush-Cheney regime, and set up this prison in Guantanamo where they literally went around and bought men around the world from many countries. They paid bounties in Afghanistan, they picked up men in Pakistan, they picked them up all over the world and brought them to this prison.
And other prisons too.
And other prisons, there's
Poland and
black sites.
There is a whole secret chain of those prisons which we're still uncovering information about. But Guantanamo was the showplace where men were held and tortured, specifically tortured under rules drafted by Rumsfeld, who was then the Secretary of Defense. And 9 of those men died. Standing at his desk
saying that it's okay for men to be held standing for hours on end. But
because he stood there.
Debra makes such an important point. How many people in the world recognize that the term war on terror is an oxymoron? War is terror. We also talk about war crimes. War is a crime.
That's a great point.
Coda aside, I think there are righteous wars of liberation, but this was intended and spread as a war of terror, global war of terror. That would
you agree with that? There are righteous wars of terror or of liberation.
A resistance, liberation.
I certainly believe in resistance without doubt. Like Walt Whitman said, resist much, obey little. So and there are times someone's gonna attack Debra here, or you, or my mother. What are we gonna do?
So defensive.
And I think we had to support, Pan-African and Caribbean post-colonial liberations movement. We have to do that. Are they effective to pick up arms? No. I have a poem called "The Arms We Need," and I'm going to perform it at 5C on the 16th.
You're not going to perform it now here?
What's that?
You're not going to perform
Maybe later. I'd actually rather give you Huey Newton's Revolutionary Suicide, which we were talking about earlier with Carl. And
well, but that's interesting, isn't it? I mean, the whole issue of violence and defensive violence.
Well, violence used by an imperialist state
but
is completely outmoded and has to go. And this is what Guantanamo is.
But does violence need to go totally?
Yes,
anywhere,
but you have to eliminate that empire which is based on violence.
And until it is, then violent revolutionary movements are okay.
Well, I think they're a necessity. I mean, you're not going to pray or hope or fast your way into seizing power from an illegitimate authority.
Are you? By the way, I love your organization, the art
and politics of justice and joy. It's just a
justice
collective.
and joy.
Most of the members don't even know they're in it. So.
No, but the point is, I think I'm doing the show now, 9th year. Nobody's used the word joy in the
joy is so important, because when you talk about Newton's revolutionary suicide, when you talk about revolutionary love, you're talking about radical love.
Yeah.
So, and that was something that was very important to the Panthers and through so many throughout history.
Yeah.
Gandhi, go back to Rumi. I mean, so many people. So we're talking about here personal choices and also individual capacity, capability. How can you be a part of this movement? And we can only do it with the people where they are. So, it's very interesting. Thich Nhat Hanh's book, Peace is Every Step, he's really getting into the whole question of personal transformation. The foreword, Dalai Lama says, trying to change the world one person at a time through the process of personal transformation is very difficult, but it's the only way.
I'm looking at Debra here. I think she's got.
I am also
yes. What?
Someone who grew up just a little bit before my friend here.
Not much.
Okay.
Nor you.
Tutored by the Black Panther Party first.
Okay. I understand.
Who understood that this regime, that was the Nixon regime when I was coming up, was completely dominating the world through imperial power.
Got it.
And we're living in that situation. So, no,
Did they see themselves as a defensive movement, though?
Oh, I'm not. Look, they were a bunch of different people, honestly.
True, but
they were the Black Panther Party for self-defense.
Right, exactly. For self-defense, very important.
And I don't think they had a vision of how we were going to change society. But many of us did go forward and come out of that and say, look, there has to be a revolution, not just in the superstructure of ideas, which follows how you set up society, but an actual revolution, which I'm a proponent of.
As am I, absolutely. Yeah. But the question, we have to get there through movement. And so what I'm interested in is coalition building.
Yeah.
And so that's about everybody in, nobody out. So what does that mean? It means, and Martin Luther King weekend is coming up, and we're all working around that. No one is free until we all are free, So we're carrying that theme through Rising Together, through our Sundays and salons and our Rising Together guerrilla theater. Stop the wars. No one is free till all are free. And that's very much, I think, what you're bringing out at this closed Guantanamo rally that will have passed.
Just go ahead, Deborah. No, go ahead.
Look, my vision is is very much affected right now by the fact that there are major challenges facing everyone on the globe.
Right.
Not just the destruction of the global environment, but the potential of nuclear war by these clashes that are developing because we have imperialism.
Yeah, we've got 100 seconds on the doomsday clock.
Yep.
Yeah, and we need to bring forward the interests of the masses of people around this globe. I am an adherent of the need for revolution as soon as possible. And I don't think that we have decades. I think we're in a very critical situation, and we can transform the world. I very much believe that, but it is not going to be done by praying about it or leaving everybody sort of at their comfort level. This is an existential crisis. I'm a follower like Carl Dix, who's been on the show, of Bob Avakian. And I think if there's any chance for the globe surviving, the billions of people on the world who have been cut out of the system have to find a way to take power, especially in the global imperialists.
I agree. And forgive me for bringing, again, the issue of violence up. I didn't hear Bob or Carl necessarily talking about revolutionary violence, a violent overthrow. And I've just, as we're talking, I remember Mark Rudd, who's been on this show, talking about that's his word, his fantasy world that he was living in, and relating to how he was sort of a New Jersey Jewish Che Guevara. You know what I'm saying. I have enormous respect. But they got into a mindset which was totally self-destructive.
Yeah.
And you're talking about the Weather Underground. But
the Weather Underground.
You have to have a revolution of mass
what
activity.
about the joy and love?
Well, here's the thing. I
think
think Deborah is right. We have to have revolution. We have to have it now. What does that mean? There's a process. Carl talked about that. And then we want everybody in. So people have to come from where they are. And most importantly, we need to have revolutions develop in the global South, which is not just in the global South. It's here in the Bronx and central Brooklyn and Harlem and everywhere there. Wherever people are black and brown, female, young and old, we need people to be able to join in. So I think, and look, there are many radical thinkers, Carl and you and Bob, all that, but then, Noam Chomsky, Cornell, Huey P. Newton, Angela Davis in our generation, so many. But I think the importance of radical love cannot be understated. And Huey does talk in this poem, Revolutionary Suicide, and I'll give that to you. But the point is, movements are one by one by one. So it's our love for one another, our care for one another is so important. Because it's not just going out in mass. It's also people who've come before us, who now have health issues. Are we there to help them? Children who are not doing well in school but have a spark that we can work with them. They've got something special in the arts and sciences. What might it be? Shall I do Revolutionary Suicide?
Please, and that's and I think also what Cornel West is talking about is that radical love for one's people, for the people out there.
Yeah.
And what Huey Newton is saying too. I think we're really agreed on that. I've been very influenced, particularly maybe the last dozen years or so, with spiritual progressive ideas such as radical love, and I'm trying to bring that into the show, into my own life. And it's for me, it comes from an understanding of the prophetic Jewish tradition, which people like Reverend Barber also exemplify, and so on. So I think we're all on the same page.
Rabbi Herschel,
Susanna,
exactly.
Hassel has been on the show a number of times.
So many.
Well, you hang around with Cornell a lot.
Well, we
professors like to hang together.
Yeah, we like that.
We're going to have a couple of them.
We need to get arrested again, too, by the way.
We're going to have a couple of them with us on Monday, January 16th, which is the actual Martin Luther King Day. And because this show is airing on the 15th, a lot of the audience are welcome to join us on Monday the 16th at 5C Cafe and Cultural Center, 68 Avenue C. And Deborah's going to speak. And we have a lot of interesting people, a couple of other professors, Professor Emerita Rosalind Pachevsky from Hunter and CUNY Graduate Center.
Jewish Voice for Peace.
Right, and who most recently wrote the book, A Land with a People. Also Professor...
I had them on,
by
the way, with that book.
And Professor Mariposa Fernandez, who's a professor at Lehman and does women's gender and Africana studies. The Palestinian poet who lives here, Fareed Bitar. We're going to have a lot of music. Trudy Silver, whose place this is and who's hosting. I'm going to do a little piece, The Arms We Need, backed on guitar by our friend Don Deering. But let me do, I don't think I'll do this on the Monday, so I'll do that here.
Do it here.
So this is Huey P. Newton, who is an amazing poet, as well as a great radical thinker. So one day, I suddenly realized I had forgotten name, age, sex, address, race. I had found myself. What is greater than love or hate? I will tell you then, what is greater than love is the relationship I have with the tip of my finger. Want me to break it down? I can break it down. It's a simple concept. If I define myself as my thumb, I deny myself my fingers. If I define myself as my fingers, I deny myself my hand. If I define myself as my hand, I deny myself my arms. If I define myself as my arm, I deny myself my body. If I define myself as my body, I deny my universe. I diminish myself. I do not know enough about myself because you do not know enough about yourself. Would you help me to know? I met someone and he was a part of myself that I did not appreciate. It is not that the ego is too large. The problem is that our ego is too small. Love is more constant than light. I heard God call. I got my gun and waited. When he appeared, I realized and took the gun from my head. By having no family, I have inherited the family of humanity. By having no possessions, I have possessed all. By rejecting the love of one, I have received the love of all. By surrendering my life to the revolution, I have found eternal life. Revolutionary suicide.
That may have been one of the best things Huey Newton contributed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Things that he contributed that were not so good,
True.
I have to say. But going back to the Guantanamo example that we talked about, I think that people should understand that here was a global superpower sweeping up people from around the globe. They were all men. There were no women that were swept up in this. But this was an example, a very powerful example, meant to show the world that we can take you,
Who's the boss?
we can lock you away, and nobody's going to give an SHIT.
Or remember you.
You're going to be disappeared into a gulag, and we can get away with it because we're the most powerful. And slowly, through a lot of struggle, most of those men have been released. Many of them, according to the U.S. government, went back into the fight. I don't know. The fight against the U.S. and who would blame them. Many of them were not examples of people I would want to follow. They were Islamic fundamentalists, actually.
But then there's the example of the Mauritanian. Do you remember his name?
Yeah, there are amazing examples of men that we're in touch with who have been released, and a lot of art and powerful stories have come out of this. And there are men right now who have been released and are stuck in places like Serbia where their family can't join them.
Debra, does this resonate with the young people you're trying to reach too? Because you're going to need so many young people, and many of them may not have been born.
I think this is why that's why we're marking the anniversary every year with the protest, and there are people writing about it and fighting to get out these voices. It's very important, and it is a question of global solidarity against what the U.S. has done. I think there's a lot to learn from it. This empire does not care about people. It will eat you up and show you the example of locking you away and completely throwing away jurisprudence, any chance of getting out. It's the reason that we mark it is because it is such an example of how this empire has not only not cared for people, it has destroyed people systematically.
And if there are profits to be made, empire will do whatever it needs or wants.
We have to overthrow this empire.
I'm just curious, is there the ability to have people down there, to have a presence down there to protest this?
Well, it's been tried.
It's been tried.
It's been tried, but it's in a part of Cuba that was stolen by the U.S. So you can't just go there.
You can't go there.
You can't go there. You can.
So you have to do
you can circle
symbolically
around.
or
and people have done some of this, but off of this anniversary, I think it's important for people to say, look, I have very little in common with most of the men held there who were Muslims and probably fairly fundamentalist. But through this process, They have changed too, the men who are still there and the men who have
But that
come
happens
out.
here too.
It can happen.
And it can happen. So the young
and we
people
can
need to
recognize
realize
that our
You're-
interests are similar, right?
Yeah.
That's, I think, what
Jim,
the
if I
point.
may,
Yes.
you being a member of
Absolutely.
the Directors Guild and
Please.
really recognizing time constraints.
Yes,
We've
we
got
are.
a minute left in this
Time-
program.
we do.
If
So-
people want to come and hear what Debra has to say more about this, and hopefully, Debra, you'll lead a bit of a discussion so people can come with their questions
Yes.
and perhaps get some answers and make their comments too. But we're going to have so many interesting people the day after today, on Monday, January 16th at 5C Cafe and Cultural Center. That's 68 Avenue C, also known as Lower East Side Avenue at East 5th Street, and it'll be from 1 to 4 p.m. in the afternoon. You'll be able to get more information at risingtogether.info.
And at worldcan'twait.org.
Well, we can't wait to have you back again and discuss so much of the great work that you're doing. And we're in this for the long haul. I'm first time I met you, Zool. It's an honor, a pleasure.
Maureen, thank
Debra, get arrested.
We've been arrested
Let's
together.
get arrested together. Yeah, we're comrades. And
No, it's a
we
great
can get
pleasure.
arrested
Yeah.
together too, Zool.
We
Yeah.
can.
Protesting, you're right. The empire.
I spent a long time in D.C., and that's where I did a lot of the first Guantanamo stuff.
Right.
And I lost track of the number of arrests. And the reason is that it's just too much work for people to have to wait to get me out and everything. So,
Yeah.
so I'm not doing that right now. However, we have
If
to
it-
evaluate that. But we want everybody to come in. That's that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Not be
Yeah.
shut out.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Fight the
very,
power.
very much. Fight the power.
Fight the power.
Fight the power.
Fight the
Fight
power.
Thank you
you,
so
Don.
very, very much.
Thank
and
you
thank
so
you
much.
all for being here with us on The Radical Imagination. We'll see you again next week on The Radical Imagination.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much.